Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tachyon Transmissions. I am, of course, your host, Byron Lafayette, and I am joined by my co-host, Jordan Morris. And we are going to be having a really fun episode today. We are going to be chatting over all of the announcements and all of the cool teases that have come out at San Diego Comic-Con regarding Star Trek. Honestly, there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting much less. So it was kind of a wealth of information of what is going to be coming up. So it's going to be a really, really great episode. And what do you think, Jordan? Are you excited to talk about what came out with Comic-Con?
Oh, absolutely. I was hoping for an Academy trailer, which we obviously got. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I did not have on my bingo card for sure. I think most people feel that way.
Absolutely. So before we get started, guys, make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast. We are a podcast that is all about Star Trek and science fiction and, basically just, two guys talking about what they love. But I like to think a lot of what we love does overlap with what a lot of people love. So definitely make sure that you subscribe for all the cool shenanigans and topics that are going to be upcoming in the future. So let's get started. Jordan, what do you want to get started with all of this cool stuff that came out over the weekend?
So let's I'm gonna start in a little bit different place. So the Strange New Worlds panel. I mean, I don't think in my wildest dreams in all the multiverse would I ever have thought that we would get a Muppet episode of Star Trek.
I was shocked and not shocked at the same time. Like with you, I never would have ever guessed that we were going to be getting that. When it was announced, I almost was like, I can see that.
Oh yeah, same. Like okay. A Muppet episode is probably the only thing I had lower in like the possibilities of happening than a musical, which again, love the musical they did. But I mean, I love the Muppets. I think it's going to be great. But in my mind, and you're, I'm sure, of a similar age, when I saw him, I'm like, oh God, is this like Crank Yanker Star Trek? But no, like it's you and I briefly talked about this, but it's going to be interesting. Like, is everybody going to be a Muppet, or are certain characters going to be Muppets? Because like, I want to see Carol Kane as Pelia interacting. She's still herself, but she's playing off the Muppets. That'll be great. I want Spock to be like Spock and then interacting with a bunch of Muppets.
Absolutely.
That just screams comedy gold right there.
I absolutely agree because you're similar age, to me. So you remember, the Muppets Take Manhattan, the Great Muppet Caper, all of those.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of, like you said, the comedy gold came from these straight man actors, Charles Grodin, acting as the love interest to Miss Piggy. It was just amazing. And it was just comedic gold because of, like you said, those straight man actors interacting with that world just made it so great. And I hope we get that in this episode.
They talk about in the Muppet Christmas Carol, the reason it works because Michael Caine treats the Muppet as fellow actors, and then Muppet Treasure Island, it works with Tim Curry because Tim Curry thinks of himself as a fellow Muppet.
Oh man, that is I had never thought of it that way with Muppet Treasure Island, and that is brilliant. Oh,
I stole that from the internet. I can't take credit for it, but yeah, it's totally spot on.
It is absolutely spot on because that is true, because both of those movies work so well for completely opposite reasons.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that is brilliant. But yeah, so it's going to be an interesting episode. Do we have any information yet on who's going to direct it?
Not yet. I'm kind of hoping it's Jonathan Frakes, but we will have to see on that.
That's what I'm hoping for as well. Is he on board to be directing any episodes of season 3?
He's directing next week's episode. It's that murder mystery holodeck episode that premieres this Thursday.
Excellent. Okay, so that is good to know that. Okay, so he is still on board. So I hope that he does the Muppet one. That would be great.
My
He would
only
have the
other
sensibilities for that.
my other wish, I want to see a Muppet Klingon. I can't really tell you why, but I just want to see a Muppet Klingon. That just seems like something that needs to happen.
I feel like a Muppet Klingon just screaming about Stovacor and like honor and like blood wine and everything would just be absolutely hilarious.
They honestly should just get an animal Muppet and dress him up in a Klingon costume. Like honestly, like I would be totally here for that.
That would be so amazing. Oh man. I never thought that was going to be like the episode that I was looking most forward to, in season 4, but it's going to be incredible, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Because Strange New Worlds, it has been so good on flipping the script on genres. It's been so good on taking these just completely wacky ideas and like, making them good. Like I was thinking of like, was it Those Old Scientists, that I did not think they were going to be able to make, the Lower Decks crossover work. And they did. It was great. So, it's going to be fun to see how they do this.
If anybody can pull it off, that crew can. So I'm with you. Like I didn't think Lower Decks would work, but they kind of nailed it. So
absolutely. So, what was the next interesting thing on your bingo card that they announced that you're excited about?
Okay, so this one's not getting enough hype in my opinion, but now that we actually have a release date for the Khan audio drama, which premieres on Star Trek Day, which is September 8th, and we've got a pretty stellar voice cast. Naveen Andrews is Khan. What really intrigued me is there's going to be something set on the USS Excelsior because George Takei is back as Captain Sulu. So shut up and take my money. And Tim Russ is back as Ensign Tuvok during his first tour of duty with Starfleet. And I'm like, ooh, I wasn't expecting this, but I am 100% on board.
No, I am the same way. Like I was honestly very surprised, because, obviously we knew, we knew a little bit of like what the storyline was. This was between, Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. But like, I was not expecting, like you said, that kind of future storyline that's going to be there. So it's going to be fascinating, I think. And, the just kind of, what is going to happen with this, like you said, the voice cast is awesome. I loved Naveen Andrews as Khan. I thought he did a great job in just a little bit that we heard.
Oh, same. And well, this will be a minor spoiler for you, but they actually could tie it into this part of the framing story could tie into something from Section 31. That being said, Section 31 is still not good enough for anyone to waste their time going watching it. If you want to experience what it's like, I recommend just go pour some acid or peroxide in your eyes, and however you feel, it lasts for an hour and like 43 minutes. So.
That is really funny. Oh,
and they're going to be weekly releases too. It's not all at once. I don't know how many episodes they're going to be, but it's going to be a weekly release type thing. So I'm here for it.
Yeah. Do we know like what the runtime is going to be for the episodes?
I don't. I'm thinking it's going to have to be like 45 minutes to an hour because initially Nicholas Meyer wrote this as like a 3-night miniseries, which you figure three episodes of 2 hours, so there's basically 6 hours of material. That's what it initially was based on. So I'm kind of thinking it's going to be equivalent to like an hour-long TV show. So we'll see.
Okay, that sounds really good. It's so interesting because I love with with podcasts becoming so big, obviously, I love that we're kind of going back to almost that old, 1940s and 50s radio drama era. I just think it's like really cool, and I love that we're getting these fully dramatized stories.
Oh yeah, and it's, as a medium, it's significantly cheaper, compared to like a television project. Just recording versus having to film and build sets and costuming and such. Um, it's another nice creative outlet that hopefully we'll have. There'll be more projects like this in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. I really hope that this is a hit because I think there's so many interesting characters and storylines that could be explored in Trek that maybe, like you said, aren't necessarily worthy of a movie or a TV show, but they still have a story to be told. I think it'd be fascinating.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's, you can get back maybe some more legacy actors who are older, and it's hard to see a 94-year-old William Shatner portray a 60-something-year-old Captain Kirk, but it's much more believable as a voiceover. But I digress.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And the quality of it, everything sounded really good when I want to say watched the trailer, but when I listened to the trailer, I loved the chanting of Khan was great. That was,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
there was some great moments in that. So I agree. I'm kind of sad that it's not getting more traction. But I'm hoping as it releases that maybe they do a little bit more marketing and get that out, because I have a feeling, with Nicholas Myers, involved in this, we're going to get something special.
Oh, the guy's a legend for a reason. And no,
Mhm.
like, you talk about getting like top-notch talent on a project. So no, I'm with his name attached to it, makes me feel much, much better.
Mhm. Absolutely. And speaking of things that aren't, that flew under the radar a little bit this weekend with announcements and things that they were talking about. Star Trek Year One was talked about, and I feel like I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it as much, compared to like Academy and everything. But what are your initial thoughts on Star Trek Year One? And I guess before we go to that, for those of you who may not know what this is, it was talked about as a dream project of this Star Trek show called Star Trek Year One that would follow Strange New Worlds and deal with the interim period between when Kirk took command of the Enterprise and the original series started, and kind of show how those relationships were created, and just how it all started, I guess, with Kirk. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, like, first touching on what you said, I didn't even hear about this. You were texting me, telling me about this, and I'm like, huh? Until you sent me the link. Like, this was not like this information was not disseminated for sure. Um, I think it's an interesting idea. I'm going to be canon Nazi here for a minute. Kirk takes over the Enterprise, command of the Enterprise at the age of 31 because he was. They say it's broken later, but there may or may not be a caveat. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But he's the youngest captain in Starfleet history at the age of 31, so he would assume command. He's born in 2233, so could be 2264, could be 2265, depending on when in the year. We know it. Yeah. Uh, Original series doesn't start, say, on his first or second mission. It's not going to be long, but there is a little bit of time to play with. Um, if he takes over in 2264 and maybe they give him a year where he's in to, get his sea legs or his space legs under him in this case before he takes on the 5-year mission. It's a really interesting idea. We've got a really good cast from Paul Wesley, Ethan Peck, Martin Quinn, and such from Strange New Worlds. My concern is I think it actually could be really good. My concern is, does this embolden them to go into a full original series reboot? Because I am not about that.
That is my concern as well, because I agree with you. I think that it's a fascinating idea. I think there is some storyline to to embrace and to explore within that timeline. And I feel like you said, with this cast, Ethan Peck, is so good as Spock. I'm really warming to Paul Wesley as Kirk. I can't remember the actor who played Scotty in Strange New
Martin
Worlds.
Quinn.
Yeah, he's great. I really like him as well. And so it's like I feel like this cast is really coming together. And like, as weird as it sounds, I think it's because we have shorter seasons with Strange New Worlds that I'm like, I'm not ready to say goodbye to these people yet. It's like I don't want to say goodbye to like Ethan Peck as Spock. I feel like there's so much more that he can do with this character. And so, the idea of a year one just, is very intriguing to me. I share your concern, with the reboot of, TOS. And I feel like unfortunately, and oh man, I hate even uttering these words, but it's like, I feel like they are, the, Paramount and these, the owners and everything are looking at this for almost like through a TikTok lens, in the sense that they are saying, okay, this new generation is not as on board with this, old, more air quote hokey show from the 1960s at Star Trek, that they they're looking at with through this money lens of thinking like, okay, we can do better type thing. And and I feel like they wouldn't outright reboot and remake the original series, but I feel like they might try and sidestep it with year one, in the sense that they would make Star Trek Year One and they would be like, oh, this is the prequel to the original series, but then they might just do 5 seasons of, Year One. And they might even say like, oh, there was a 5-year mission, with Kirk before the original series that we didn't know about, and they'll just fit it into canon, and it'll be a quasi remake of TOS without actually being one. That's kind of what I get the feeling of what they want to do.
If you're going to do that, just go ahead and outright admit it's a different universe and then
Mm-hmm.
do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree. Mm-hmm.
I what you said is my concern. Now, if this were to be like a single season,
Mm-hmm.
like a one-off, and then they jumped ahead till after Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and we did like a phase 2 about a second 5-year mission. As long as they just address it, don't like try to do your own thing and crap on what's come before.
I agree.
If you want to embrace it as a full-on reboot, then just say it's its own continuity and go from there, and then we don't have to worry about it.
I agree. I feel like phase 2 is sitting right there, like you said, after the motion picture. That I feel like they, because Paul Wesley is a little older, and like they can easily make it so that the cast is not like just wet behind the ears. And I feel like like you said, you have a whole very wide open period after the motion picture that you can explore. And and you don't have to worry about canon. You don't have to worry about, bumping into anything. Like, to me, that just feels like the wide open, sequel to Strange New Worlds that they could do.
Yeah, for sure. Like that, you don't have so many limitations. So, but we'll see. A lot's what's going to depend on the whole. Now that the Skydance-Paramount merger is going through, as you and I and most people don't expect Secret Hideout's deal to get renewed, or if it is, it's going to be heavily modified. What gives credence to this? They did say they're going to have an official pitch for year one with the new management. I did find that, so that's very interesting. The big selling point that makes me think this really could get made is you've already got all the Enterprise sets built. You got the costumes, and you've got, what, 65% of the cast, and you'll probably get the rest by the time Strange New Worlds ends. So it would be you don't have all the upfront cost of building the sets and such with this show. So does this basically let them print money?
Exactly. That's my thought as well. I think that I would not be surprised at all if this show did get made, because, like you said, it's all there already. They already have, a built-in fan base of Strange New Worlds, people who like these actors. You're not, because I remember there was an old adage in like network TV that was talked about, that you would have, shows that maybe were lagging a little bit in the ratings, but they still had a audience, and they would be renewed, and they wouldn't pick up an extra pilot. And they would say basically, yeah, this show might be, a little long in the tooth. It's been around for a while, but it has a built-in audience, and they're going to tune in to watch this next season. Whereas if we cancel it and we go with something completely new, we may not find an audience with that. And I feel like that's the case with Strange New Worlds, that like, yeah, it's been around for 5 years, a little longer because of the breaks, but it has a built-in audience. People really like it, and they will follow these cast members to something else. Versus, okay, if Skydance does their own Star Trek TV show, will people tune in? They may not, and it may turn into a disaster, with buying all these new sets and building them and everything. Whereas, like you said, you have a means to print money basically with year one. And frankly, you're going to get anything that has Captain Kirk's name on it, you're going to get people to watch. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Mhm.
I agree 100%.
Mhm.
I mean, this is the whole reason Starfleet Academy already has a season 2 renewal. I think they spent like $135 million getting everything ready on season 1 with these massive sets they built. So you almost have to renew it for a second season just to get your money's worth out of it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I feel like an interesting thing too is that, I completely agree with you that I don't, that the current iteration of the secret hideout deal is not going to be continued. I think we can all agree on that. We may have a new deal that is written, because, a lot of people have problems with secret hideout, and there's a lot of very legitimate problems with that. The fact does remain, that these guys have had experience with Star Trek for a long time now. Of cast, crew, all this different stuff that had been working, with these shows. And I could see Skydance, maybe thinking, hey, we can maybe use these guys, and I feel like Secret Hideout, they've made so much money from the Star Trek deal that I can't imagine that they would just, if offered a new deal, I can't imagine that they would walk away. I feel like they really want to keep, their hands on at least part of this IP, which feels like it might be a little bit of the reasoning, and we'll talk about this more in a few minutes, of why Starfleet Academy has so many nods to previous shows, including actors from other shows,
Mm-hmm.
that it almost feels like Secret Hideout is maybe hedging their bets a little bit. That it's kind of like, okay, we're going to pitch you, Star Trek Year One with Kirk and Spock and all these characters, possibly maybe even William Shatner involved in some way. We don't know. Then it's like, hey, we have Starfleet Academy, but guess what? It has characters from, from Voyager in it. Oh, it has all these nods to other things to bring in audiences. So it's like, when Skydance comes in, are they going to see, hey, wow, Starfleet Academy is a popular show? Do we really want to cancel it and just get rid of these guys, or can we fix their deal a little bit and keep them? I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think the biggest sticking point you'll see if there is a deal, I don't think Secret Hideout is going to have an exclusivity deal where they're the only ones who can make Star Trek. Because part of the issue they've had, and I think you'd agree with this, they can really only work on 3 shows at once. And I'm not saying to oversaturate the market, but then we can bring in Skydance, and maybe they can bring in Terry Metalis or Jonathan Frakes, and they can do a modified version of Star Trek Legacy, which is the project everybody wants. And if they want to licenses out to Netflix or to Amazon and such, I think that's part of the problem with the deal between Secret Hideout's exclusivity deal, they being the only ones that can make Trek, and Paramount Plus being where Star Trek is completely locked into. because let's face it, like even when it was on Netflix, so many more people have Netflix than Paramount Plus. Like you were broadening your fandom so much more. Now they're locked behind a single streaming service that not as many people have. You're not growing the fan base as much. I think we could do another whole episode on that. But
I completely 100% agree with you that I think that the exclusivity deal, that's dead. I think that would be absolutely gone. And that would be for the better. I agree. And like one thing I've always thought is weird that they absolutely should do is like, I understand, okay, they want people to come to Paramount Plus, to watch Star Trek. I get that. But you also, exactly what you said, have to realize that you have to broaden your base if you want to be bringing in new subscribers. And like what I almost feel they should do, for example, with Strange New Worlds, is like, okay, you have season 3 is airing on Paramount Plus. Okay, you should license seasons 1 and 2 to Netflix right now.
Preach.
Yeah. And then it's like people go and watch and they're like, hey, where's season 3? Oh, it's on Paramount Plus. They're going to run to start up that subscription because they're going to want to see what comes next. Yeah. That's what, that's basically what almost the Blacklist, I remember, did back in the day with Netflix, that it aired on the NBC app, but they would always send the previous seasons over to Netflix, and it kept the show going basically for 10 years because it was finding new fans constantly on Netflix.
Yeah, I think put L Classic Trek back on Netflix. Like, if somebody's got Netflix and they've watched, TNG, DS9, and Voyager, it's like, whoa, wait, there's a couple of sequel shows to this? Well, my Netflix subscription runs out in a month. I'll just get Paramount Plus for a couple of months, and then I can continue watching same show and watch the follow-ups. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to me.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's a no-brainer. And there's, because it's like, when you think about it, to be perfectly honest, yes, I know Star Trek has legions of fans everywhere, but it's like, how many subscriptions are 100% based on people keeping them for classic Trek? I feel like there's probably not as many, that I feel like, there's not as many people who are being like, oh yeah, I keep paying $14.99 a month just to watch TNG. Like, I feel like that's not exactly the case. I feel like people keep their subscription for multiple reasons. And so having those classic shows on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on something like that, I don't think is going to hurt the bottom line of Paramount Plus at all.
Correct. And I mean, Star Trek fans buy merch and like nobody's business. So to be fair, a lot of longtime fans, how many of them have all of TNG on DVD or Blu-ray, all of DS9 and Voyager? Now, I mean, God knows I do. I remember being mad. I spent a fortune and finally got them all on all the seasons, and then I got streaming, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, definitely, just I think some more shrewd business moves will help. Not being exclusive to Paramount Plus, and then Secret Hideout is not going to get an exclusivity deal. Let them if they want to make these couple of projects, maybe they pump out 1 or 2, to sort of keep, and then it buys, if nothing else, it buys Skydance some time to figure out what they want to do. Because even if this goes through within the next couple of weeks, like they're saying, Skydance is not going to pump out their own Star Trek project in 2026. No, we would be lucky to get something by the end of 2027. It's probably going to be 2028.
I completely agree. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but Skydance is more of a movie studio from what I've seen, not as much a TV studio. Would you say that's correct?
I would agree with that, yes.
Yeah. So I could see, honestly, Skydance saying, okay, your exclusivity deal is gone. And I could see them saying, we're going to focus on theatrical movie Trek. And, we'll allow you guys to still kind of play a little bit in the TV realm of Star Trek. Well, also, like you said, maybe bringing Terry Matalas and some of these other filmmakers in order to, create different content, and especially if we see year 1, maybe it's just a 1-season thing. We've talked about that there's the potential that William Shatner might be narrating it possibly. And we could see if that's the case, I think it would be a single season type show. and that would have a massive, amount of nostalgia and people coming in. And I'm pretty sure Skydance would want something like that. But then, like you said, everyone wants legacy. So like bring that in, get that done while you're working on other things.
Well, like, you could even almost do it. And just to chime in on they talked about a Shatner project. They've known about this whole merger for a while. So I'm sure if they're getting ready to do a formal pitch to Skydance for year one, like Byron said, could this be how they related to the Shatner project? And like you said, Shatner is basically narrating his first days as captain of the Enterprise, which that's a great way to bring him in and, sort of merge multiple generations of Trek together. But, if going back to the exclusivity deal, so, Kurtzman, you can still stick around and make your shows, but like, it has to be tethered back to a previous show from that era. Like, this is going to be tethered to Strange New Worlds. Academy's tethered to Discovery. And then maybe Metalis and whatever production company they bring in for Legacy, maybe they do the post-Voyager TNG Prodigy era itself, and that's their wheelhouse. You almost sort of lock it in by eras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like honestly, I think that I completely agree, and I think that might work, to do that because it's kind of like what we talked about before, that these eras do have their fans, and we have the Metalis fans who are diehard Legacy Picard fans as we are, and you also have, they're smaller, but you have a lot of fans of Discovery. That show had its fan base, and so having it kind of in these eras, I kind of like that idea of tethering these shows to different things. And like you said, a year one narrated by Shatner would be a kind of really nice way to, couple all of these eras together in a way that kind of makes them feel like one universe completely. And let's be honest, like, let's say for a moment, let's say that Kurtzman and all of them got Shatner to sign on to say, yes, I will do Star Trek year one, maybe with a cameo at the beginning and the end, and then narrating. If they, we know that Shatner is famously dodgy about the Star Trek projects he will do, like famously. Like he has said he's turned down so many requests to come back to Star Trek because he didn't like them. So if Kurtzman was able to get him to enthusiastically sign on to a project, that is a massive benefit that they have going into a pitch with Skydance.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you say no to that if you're Skydance?
Oh, exactly. Because Skydance and them want Shatner back for a project in order to bring people back. So you suddenly have this pitch. Okay, Shatner might, if you turn this project down, Shatner might be catty and then say, all right, I'm not doing anything else because I liked that one. Or it might take another 3 or 4 years to find a project that he likes versus, hey, you got the project that he's signed on to. Yeah, that adds a lot of incentive for them to say to Secret Hideout, we'll do this deal with you.
You're at least extended some sort of deal. Okay. So no, yeah, I'm with you. And that would be, you talk about an ace in a hole. I don't think you can get a bigger one than that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. You absolutely. It is an ace in the hole. And, like I said, I don't want to hype it up too much as that's what's happening because we obviously don't know. But, just looking at all of the cards and all of the clues that have been laid out, it feels like that's probably what's happening.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Before we get into Academy, I actually wanted to take just a minute and maybe let's talk about what wasn't mentioned at Comic-Con this weekend.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
So, absolutely nothing about this Star Trek sitcom that Tawny Newsome and that other guy, Justin something, I forget his last name, are working on. I think most people, myself included, I'm sure you'll agree with this, Byron, think that's probably dead in the water. It just seems like a very odd project. and it doesn't seem like something Skydance is going to be interested in.
I completely agree with you. When it was announced, I remember I was very kind of 60-40 against it, not that I don't like humor, not that I don't think Star Trek can be funny, because we've absolutely seen that can be the case. But it just felt like a very risky project to put out into the nethersphere of Star Trek with its fans, because it's one of those things that I feel like at best is going to be a niche, audience, and
Agreed.
at worst is going to be absolutely torched and hated by everyone and could damage the IP. So I agree with you. I think if it wasn't announced, or wasn't, I mean, not announced, if it wasn't talked about at Comic-Con, I feel like it probably is dead in the water. I agree with that. Especially with the Skydance deal, going through, I don't think that they're going to, they would approve that. It almost feels like they maybe had to choose between, that and maybe year one, and they decided to go with the safe project. That,
Yep.
That's what it feels like. But, I wouldn't be opposed to this Star Trek sitcom if maybe it was a one-off, where maybe it was like, 2 or 3 episodes, maybe, or even just a TV movie that was a comedy or something like that. If they wanted to do that, I wouldn't be as opposed to that. But as a full-on series, I just was never too keen on it.
Yeah, it seems, I don't know, it just seems like a very odd project.
Mm-hmm.
We're straying too far from. Here's the thing: Star Trek needs to be Star Trek first and foremost. That doesn't say you can't have some creativity here and there, but you don't want to stray too far so it's not Star Trek anymore. But yeah, that I'm kind of like we said. I think that's dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2 projects that I wanted to discuss and mention that we heard absolutely nothing about are the 2 current film projects supposedly in development. Chris Pine's Star Trek 4, and as much as it pays me, I think that one's dead.
I agree. Uh-huh.
I don't think Paramount's got. I mean, whoever the casting director was back in 08 07 when they got this started, I mean, stroke of genius. The casting was phenomenal. But that being said, because it was phenomenal, everybody in there is like a very in demand actor. Chris Pine in demand. Carl Urban's in everything. Zachary Quinto. Actually, it's funny sidebar. Todd McFarlane of Spawn, wrote for Spider-Man, was in an interview recently and says Zachary Quinto is his dream Batman casting, which bit out of left field for me, not gonna lie, but it was definitely worth listening to his thoughts.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
I mean, what isn't Zoe Saldana in anymore? She's already
Yeah.
Avatar 3 is coming out, plus I mean, Marvel, so I mean she's very in demand. John Cho's always had steady work. Like that cast is not going to be cheap, and by the time you pay for the cast, and if you want to bring Chris Hemsworth back, I mean, Lord, there goes half your budget right there. So,
so expensive, yeah.
Unless you could basically do the big 3, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, I don't think they're going to spend. I don't think it's not conducive to making a profit, which it's going to need to do. So I think that one's dead, unfortunately. The other project being the guy who did Andor, the Toby Haynes project.
That was the prequel, right?
Yes. Well, the rumor has been that they can't decide if they want it to be like the Earth Romulan War or the origin of Kirk and Pike's Enterprise. And the rumor said it's going to end, and Robert Averill launches as captain of the Enterprise. And then some people say it's an Earth Romulan War movie. And I think there's been some back and forth. That still has, from the scuttlebutt on the internet, saying there still is some chance for that. They're going to wait for the merger, maybe figure out which direction they want to go, and maybe we get that 2020. It's not going to be 2026. I don't care what anybody says. It'll be 2027. But because the rumor has been that Skydance wants to come back and maybe knock out a couple of Trek movies to drudge up or bring up some more fan support and make it popular or help grow its popularity. So those are the big three. Was there anything else you can think of that they has rumored? But we heard nothing about a Shatner project, but we sort of had been speculating, and that's how we linked it to year one. That was just our thoughts, no inside information there.
Yes, yeah, definitely no inside information with that. Just more theorizing. But yeah, I mean those two Kelvin universe, films, like you said, it pains me not to get another Chris Pine movie because I would love that. But I agree with you that I don't see it happening right now. The only way that I could potentially see it would almost have to be just a complete rewrite that probably only had Spock and Kirk in it, and I just don't know if people would accept that or not. And it's just I don't see it happening at this point. And then that kind of honestly brings up the point of, okay, if the Kelvin universe is, for the most part dead, unfortunately, like it's going to end with 3 movies, then is there really a point to doing a Kelvin universe prequel then? I mean, like, I don't know. Like,
oh, well, that's another thing discussion. They were saying, some people said it was a Kelvin prequel. Some people, it's leaning more now to it's a Prime prequel.
Now, see, that would make sense to me because I feel like if the Kelvin universe is done right now, I feel like if they're going to do a prequel film, it's best to set it in the Prime universe.
Agreed.
And that would actually be interesting. Like you said, if it was the Earth Romulan War, or if it, was involved with like Captain April, that would be interesting. I feel like that could work. Because it would obviously be a reboot, with like a new, new crew, new captain, everything like that. But I hope that happens, honestly, because I would be very interested to see an Earth Romulan War film. I think that would be very, very fascinating and fun. I almost feel it's kind of weird, like with the Kelvin universe, because I love it. I loved all 3 movies. And it was thanks to those films that we got all of the TV shows like Strange New Worlds and everything. But I feel like I would almost, at this point, we've been 10 years removed from Star Trek Beyond.
10 years next summer.
Okay, 10 years next summer. It's in this weird area, basically, where it's, people love legacy sequels. People love the nostalgia of that. And that was part of the reason why the Kelvin trilogy did well. But I almost feel like if they wanted to do a sequel to the Kelvin universe, they almost need to wait another 5 years. That it was like that they could almost do a Kelvin Part 4 film, but almost pitch it as a legacy sequel to the Kelvin trilogy. And it might actually be successful at that point. And you could almost reboot almost some of the cast members in the sense that you could anchor it with Chris Pine's Kirk, maybe Quinto's Spock. But then, honestly, I don't know. Maybe you set them with like a new brash crew or something like that they, that they're having, to train or something like that.
Yeah, you just promote everybody else off the ship and give them a cameo.
Exactly. You have a cameo like, oh, Uhura's off, doing this or whatever. Sulu's off doing that. But I feel like you would have to wait. You'd have to wait another 5 years for people to really be hungry for it. But I don't know. What do you think of that?
I hadn't thought of that. That's an interesting perspective, but I don't know. It's getting to the point now, like you said, it's almost been so long that it's almost been too long. Like you'd almost have to do like, if you're gonna do it, like you said, get through the Skydance deal, do your current projects, and then maybe you do. Is there a multiverse episode where you run into Quinto Spock or Chris Pine's Kirk, and then that it sort of brings it back to the forefront, and then you announce a movie type thing, try to build up some hype for it. That I think actually could really work.
Honestly, I would love a multiverse type storyline because we've already had, we know that exists with Star Trek. And that would be, I mean, so cool. Can you imagine, you have, a fistful of Kirks, it's like, you know, that's like, you have Pine's Kirk, in a film meeting, another Kirk or whatever. I just think that would be really cool. And I think people would actually like something like that. Um, but I agree. It's in a weird place right now. Um, and then, it's also problematic because Star Trek Beyond, it was a hit, it made money, but it wasn't, I think it did like 385 million, worldwide. And so it's kind of like, it's not like the first one, which I think did, I don't remember, the first one did a huge amount of money and the second one did a lot too. That it's not like that, this massive demand of like, oh, we have to do a sequel to this $1 billion movie, so it's definitely weird, and it might go down in the history books as one of those unfortunate, what ifs, if they could have, gotten everything together, we could have had maybe a really great Kelvin 4, but I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see. There's been some issues with multiversal type things recently. A lot of people have a hard time keeping up with what universe is what. I know there's been some complaints from like Skydance and Paramount brass about that. It's not the I don't think it's that hard to keep track of, but I'm also an aerospace engineer, so maybe that's just me being different. But I'd be curious to see how, maybe give it a couple years, see how Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars play in, because if there's ever going to be a multiversal project, and if they see like, oh, we can do like multiple universes and we're pulling this off, and these make, I mean, they're Avengers movies, they're going to make $1 billion whether they suck or not. But if it's actually good, it's like, is everybody going to copycat that, and then maybe you do a multiversal project there? Or is it going to be like, okay, people want to see it, but this is confusing, so we're no multiverse stuff for the foreseeable future?
No, I think you're completely accurate because, I agree. Doomsday and Secret War are really, it's pushing the multiverse to its absolute limit with audiences. And, in the sense that we have so many different universes. We have the Fox universe of X-Men. We have now the separate universe of Fantastic Four. We have all of these different universes, probably, we have the Spider-Man universes. We have all of this that, if anybody is going to be confused, they're going to be confused with Doomsday and Secret Wars. And so if they can pull it off and they can turn out a good movie that makes, a crap ton of money, like you said, there is going to be, there's going to be copycatting, and you're going to have maybe Skydance and them saying, hey, can we pull something like this off with Trek? Can we do a theatrical film that brings all of the captains back, in some crossover in-game style event, or, can we do a film where, Prime, Picard, and Kirk meet, Chris Pine, it's like, they're going to be much more open to those ideas if those films are a hit.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of projects that are pushing things to the limit for audiences and are not surefire bets, this brings us to Starfleet Academy. This is a project that is already controversial. People either are really excited or are already very diametrically opposed to it. It's a very interesting project. It's one I am fascinated by. And also too, I will say this, I've been seeing online, on Reddit and everything, all these Star Trek fans saying, this is a show nobody asked for, nobody wanted this. And I will actually push back on that a little bit because I have been a Star Trek fan my entire life. I watched the movies on repeat when I was a kid. And, as I got older, I read up, I had a lot of Star Trek fan friends and everything. And I always remember people talking about a Starfleet Academy TV show or movie. I remember that was always in discussion for the last 30 years. Now, I won't say it was always a massive discussion of like people were petitioning for it, but I remember it had always been mentioned in the fandoms. So I feel like people claiming this just came out of nowhere is not completely accurate.
Gene Roddenberry talked about it because I think with the contract disputes they used to have with the OG cast back, they never signed them on for multiple movies, so they'd always have to renegotiate after each movie. So one of I think the tactics was like, hey, do you have a fallback? And I believe it was between Star Trek 5 and 6. They were supposed to be John Cusack was supposed to be a young Spock. I'm trying to think who was. I think Ethan Hawke was supposed to be young Kirk, and it basically was an older Enterprise, a previous edition, and it was basically their Starfleet Academy movie. So this has been around. Roddenberry's discussed this, so it's been around forever, like you said. And do you remember the Starfleet Academy books that came out in like the 90s, like Cadet Worf, Deanna Troi as a cadet?
I remember that. Yes.
So yeah, like you said, this is like, I don't know if people were necessarily clamoring for it, but this idea has been bounced around since probably the late 80s.
Exactly. So I feel like there is enough interest in this show that I feel like a lot of people are going to check it out, even if they're unsure about it. Now for those who don't know, it is set in the Discovery era, which is the far future.
32nd century to be exact.
Yes. Being as such, there is a lot of characters from Discovery who are going to be showing up in that. We already saw that in the trailer. But a bit of a surprise for me when I saw the trailer was all of the callbacks to other shows, and then seeing Kurtzman and others talk about how this was really a celebration of Star Trek and the entire IP. Were you surprised by that, Jordan? Were you expecting that from this show?
So I've watched all of Discovery. I am not a huge Discovery fan. I wish I was. It definitely improved as its run went on. I'll be honest, I was afraid this was going to be Star Trek 90210. It did not appear to be that way in the trailer. It actually was very, very pleasantly surprised by the trailer. Was not expecting the sheer number of Easter eggs. I mean, we knew Robert Picardo was coming back as the Doctor, and they have confirmed it is the Doctor who returned to the Alpha Quadrant on Voyager, not the backup from Living Witness. If you know your Voyager, you guys will know what I'm talking about. If not, feel free to go watch. The Doctor had a backup copy, and he had its own separate backstory. Maybe we'll get an episode where the Doctor meets his backup and there's two of them. That would be a really cool episode. James T. Kirk Pavilion. In various shots, you see names on a wall with Ambassador Garrick, Captain Carol Freeman, Commander Beckett Mariner, their father, Admiral Alonzo Freeman, Lieutenant Commander Data, Admiral Garrick. The one that got me was Admiral Harry Kim. So he finally got promoted. We didn't get to see it till the 32nd century, but that one, I like that one. But tons of just name dropping people. There's a whole section with just there's a display about Captain Benjamin Sisko is now if Kurtzman convinced Avery Brooks to somehow come back, you talk about a trump card or scoring points with a fan base, assuming they don't ruin it. But I don't think we'll see him. But it would be really cool to. I don't think we will. But yeah, the sheer number of callbacks was I was not expecting that at all. But yeah, these callbacks were just it brought up a lot of hype. I'm like, okay, if they're gonna do this, then if they're gonna honor previous Trek, okay, I'm here for this.
No, absolutely. I felt the same way. I was, this was the show I was most nervous about. And this trailer dispelled a lot of my nerves because, it felt very sincere. It felt very, it had a Star Trek feel to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It didn't feel like I was very worried about this kind of CW 90210 as well as you. And so far from the trailer, I didn't get that tone. Now, of course, we haven't seen the show, so we don't know. But I feel like if Starfleet Academy can capture, now this isn't exactly cadet, but it's like, if they can capture the feel of the TNG episode Lower Decks, I feel like this show could be really good.
Yeah, that or maybe like the First Duty,
Oh yes,
like
exactly.
something like that. Like, and one of the other things I found intriguing, I don't know if you've gotten to read the character bios, but like Paul Giamatti's character is the villain, and I had his name pulled up and I closed the tab by mistake, and I'm not gonna butcher it, but he's half Klingon, half Tellarite.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, I mean, because he had said he wanted to play a Klingon, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get a Klingon Paul Giamatti. I don't think anybody's going to have any issue with that, and if you do, um, I think you got bigger problems. But that was interesting. Holly Hunter's captain is half Lanthanite, like Pelia. So she's. I watched an interview today. Her character is 422 years old.
Oh,
So I actually wonder if they're going to make her related to Pelia. That'd be kind of wild. Um, but there's full-blooded Klingons. There is a okay. This one threw me. There is a female Jem'Hadar who's wearing a Starfleet security uniform with the Klingon insignia. If you look at it, like in the red trim, it's got the Klingon Empire insignia, embroidered in. And well, I don't know if you remember this, Byron, but Jem'Hadar are bred and they're only male.
yes,
So I'm like, what? Apparently, she's part Klingon, part Jem'Hadar. So somehow, I don't know how that's going to work. They're going to have to explain that. But not only is she, dual race, but she's the gender that didn't exist before. I'm like, oh, this is, as long as it's not. I think you have to acknowledge it, but this is, okay, this is piquing my interest where they're going with this.
I can I completely agree. Like the multi-species type thing and the mixed species of, like you said, having the Klingon-Tellarite, like really interesting. And it adds a little bit of a new flavor of it being so far in the future that it doesn't just feel like, oh, this is just a new Star Trek show with just a different date slapped on it. Like it's actually, it feels like they're really pushing to make this feel like a different world,
Yeah, and they've connected it because President Rillick in Discovery, the Federation president, is part human, part Cardassian, and part Bajoran, which I don't know if a lot of people caught. Which I know, just saying that is just weird. Like, I mean, anybody who's watched Deep Space Nine, like, you're what? Like, so yeah, but it's like you said, it's adding a little bit of spice, a little bit more variety to the flavor. And I mean, I think I could watch Robert Picardo in pretty much anything. Like, it'll be curious to see how he's, the guy's 800 plus years old by now. Like, he's outlived all his friends. Is he in a positronic body like Picard was? Is he still a hologram? Is he still this? Speaking of holograms, one of the new characters, it's a new species. It's, I can't, I don't have the bios pulled up, but she's literally they're a species of holograms. So there's literally a species of hologram now. And I think she's like 3 weeks old and she joins the academy.
That is
So
now that is interesting. Oh, the sentient hologram species is really, I like that.
yeah, it's adding like, but because that comes up in Voyager. Do holograms have rights and such? And I mean all the stuff with Data. I'd love to see another android character personally.
Oh, I would too. I feel like that is the one area with a lot of Trek that they haven't fully explored is I would love to see another android like Data. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, that android who shows up in Discovery season 5, who's assumed type android, I don't know, that I really enjoyed that. Be curious to see if any more of them pop up.
Because especially that we see with as Picard showed us, that there's actually kind of like a small population of them now.
Yes, because that'd be a full-fledged society. That's joined the Federation since then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Holly Hunter looked interesting as a captain. She did sort of sit kind of funny in the captain's chair. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's a reason for it. Like she didn't look commanding,
yeah, she didn't look comfortable in it, I felt like.
but like, is that going to be part of her backstory?
Mhm.
I would think so. Always good to see Tig Notaro. She's hilarious and everything.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited to have her back. I loved her character in Discovery.
Oded Fair back as Admiral Vance. He was great. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tilly show up with an occasional Discovery cameo here and there. But there's there's been some speculation online. The new ship is called the USS Athena. It's not gonna lie, I was not a particularly big fan of the 32nd century starship design. It was a little out there. Now this one almost looks like it may be you can reconfigure it and it changes shapes, or like certain sections of the ship may rotate or move independently of others. It kind of looked like the saucer section and the neck attached backwards to the Galaxy Quest NACA protector to me. It was cool looking, but that's sort of what it looked like when I first saw it.
Yeah, it's definitely I'm interested in the new ship because I agree with you. Like I at once, I was the Discovery era ships were definitely odd. There was a few of them I liked better than others. I know I do have currently one of my main ship in Star Trek Online currently right now is a Discovery era ship. It's a carrier. But yeah, they're definitely odd. I'm very interested in this new ship, the flagship. I'm also fascinated. I love the idea that the Starfleet Academy is on board the ship. I really like that.
Yeah, they need some field training
Mhm.
for sure. So it's not going to be. That was I felt like DS9's biggest problem. They never went anywhere the first couple seasons unless it was in a runabout. So like you just need a ship with Trek. You just do.
You absolutely, because that was part of what worried me so much about like the possible soap opera elements. Was I was like, okay, if this is set on like in San Francisco on a campus, they're not going to be going anywhere, and they're going to have to be dialing up the relationship drama, the different stuff like that. And so I was very nervous, and so them being on a ship, I think, is going to make it way more interesting, and we're going to actually be able to see the cadets being tested in like you said, field training.
Yeah, it's just gonna add something else to it. So like and there was a lot more positive spin in the trailer than I thought there was gonna be. Not that I expected it to be negative. I don't know. There was a lot more, maybe more hopeful
Yeah,
than I thought.
I would agree with that. It definitely I had that feeling from it. It felt, and maybe that's when I say it had the Trek flavor. It had that hopeful Trek feel to it. I think like the voiceover where they were talking about, like honor, duty, all of that. Like, I don't know. I liked that Kurtzman and them, it felt like they really put an effort into this trailer to say like, this isn't 90210. This is a Star Trek show with all the ideals of Star Trek.
Completely agree.
Mhm. And also too, I just I really liked Paul Giamatti's character whistling the Star Trek theme.
It threw me at first. It was a bit meta, but I
Uh-huh.
actually kind of like it, and it gives the villain some pizzazz and some
Mhm.
personality. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of modern um, movies, projects. I mean, how many years do we complain about MCU villains being so
Mhm.
watered down? Um, for every one great villain portrayal, how many mediocre ones and just outright crappy ones are there? So having a good villain on Paul Giamatti really could carry the show a long way.
Mhm. I absolutely agree, because, Star Trek, is pretty well known for its villains, like you said, having pizzazz. You had General Chang quoting Shakespeare as he's, blowing up ships. It's like you have Khan, waxing philosophical and poetic, as he's after Kirk. Even Cybok, is stuck in a bad movie, but like his character is very, like almost he's like one of those 90s televangelist type, characters.
That's how
Almost.
Shatner based him off of that whole character. Yeah, that's funny how you mentioned that. Yeah, Shatner based him on watching like televangelist in the 80s.
That's funny. Oh, so I'm glad I picked that up, So it's like Star Trek has always had, I feel like, these characters that are very I would even say like the Borg Queen in Picard season 2 had a bit of pizzazz to her. She wasn't just, evil. She actually was a little bit more nuanced. And so I'm completely down for having, a villain that is maybe, has a little bit of hamminess at points, has personality, is colorful. I'm all for that. I mean, yeah, look at Mud, I mean, Mud is the perfect example,
Oh yeah, and then I mean, in Gul Dukat, the guy just thought himself like, it was a rough time, but think of all the great things I did for you. You massacred my entire family, but I could have massacred everyone's entire family. You're like, it's like there's like the pizzazz. Like a good villain doesn't see themselves as a villain; they see themselves as doing the right thing. They just don't realize that they're in the wrong.
Oh, absolutely! I'm so glad that you brought up Gul Dukat, because probably next to Khan, he might be my favorite Star Trek villain. He is just so incredibly good. And like you said, he's so colorful,
he's so outright despicable, but you just can't help but like want to see more of him.
Oh, absolutely. And like I would even throw Garrick a little bit into the not villain, but like antagonist, because it's like he's so colorful, that line when they say, is anything you ever tell me the truth? Well, absolutely. Even the lies, especially the lies.
Yep. It's like, exactly.
You never know where you stand. And he's just, when he's trying to massacre, the all of the changelings, and it's like, it's so good, there's so many great Star Trek antagonists and villains and everything. So I hope, and I'm cheering for Paul Giamatti to be a very memorable villain.
Me too.
And I think it's also worth noting that they offered Paul Giamatti 5 different roles.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that they gave him his pick, and they said, we have these 5 characters. Who would you like to play? And this was the character he chose. So we can draw from that what we may, but Paul Giamatti's a great actor. He's a very serious actor. So I feel like he wouldn't have chosen a character that was, just completely one note. I feel like that he probably chose someone who he felt was worthy of it. So.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and in fact, I think wasn't it a red carpet? He talked about being a Star Trek fan, and somebody called his agent. They saw it, and they're like, "Hey, listen," and he's like, "What? I could do Star Trek? Yes. We don't I don't care. Yes." So like, I actually love how they've added a lot of Oscar winners to Star Trek the last couple years. I mean, Michelle Yeoh, there's another one that has a cameo in Section 31. It doesn't save the movie, but that was the best. That was the most interesting thing in the movie. You and I need to probably do a hate watch podcast about that.
Yes. We definitely need to do that.
But now Holly Hunter, Paul Giamatti, who else? Who knows what's next? I feel like this seems like a show you could bring in, like, if there was ever one you could bring in an A-list guest star, this seems like it would be the one.
Absolutely. Because, we're going to be having professors, we're going to be having faculty, it's going to, there is so many great opportunities. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's get Brad Pitt as an Andorian, as a guest star.
I would watch the crap out of that.
Yes.
I would watch the crap out of that.
So it's like, let's do it,
Well, Jennifer Aniston's dad was on Voyager, John Aniston, so maybe she wants to be like dad and be on Star Trek as well.
It's true. There is a huge, people do not realize how much traction Trek has in Hollywood, with famous people. So it's like, it's possible, but I'm glad to see we're on the same page with Academy, and like, I'm definitely excited to see how it turns out. I'm really hoping that it's great, and I'm hoping that they knock it out of the park and we get a really memorable, good show. Just to let all of our listeners know, we are going to be reviewing Academy as it comes out. So another reason to subscribe, because we will be doing a week-to-week watch of that show. So and hopefully it will be a joyous celebration of it and not a hate watch. That's what we're all hoping for. So, but make sure you join us for it, no matter what it ends up becoming. Well, Jordan, before we wrap up this episode, any final thoughts on these announcements before we head out?
A lot to look forward to. It's nice to have something to look forward to. We've all been through the dark ages of Star Trek when we didn't have anything coming and it just sucked. One final thing, they said Academy is supposed to come early 2026. They've said early before. It's meant January, sometimes it's February, sometimes it's April. The way the deadline goes for the deal with Skydance, it's expected to end in July. I'm thinking we're probably going to get this. My gut would say February. It's going to be earlier because they're going to want to have the whole run and then get all the streaming numbers data. It's like, hey, please renew our contract. If they have numbers to back up the viewing numbers to back up this show, they're going to want to have that. So I'm leaning towards it premiering closer to the start of 2026 than say April.
I definitely agree with you on that. I think that's very, very true. Because going into those pitch meetings, going into getting that deal and in some way renewed a lot of it is going to factor on the viewing numbers of Strange New Worlds season 3 and the viewing numbers of Academy. So I agree with you. That's going to be a huge thing. And if both of those shows knock it out of the park viewing wise, I think the likelihood of year one and the likelihood of Secret Hideout having some role in Star Trek in the future is probably pretty close to assured at that point.
Yep. It definitely improves their chances significantly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode on all that's coming with Star Trek in the near future and all the announcements from Comic-Con. As Jordan said, there's a huge amount to look forward to and a huge amount to discuss. And I think it's a good time to be a Star Trek fan. I would say we are in a new golden age of Trek after the dark ages. So I'm very happy that we have all this content to watch and discuss and ruminate over.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. So again, thanks for listening, and make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this episode with anyone who likes Trek, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.